Hey, Doug Walker here. I have said that I was going to watch Clone Wars, the famous animated Star Wars show, especially after seeing the second season of Mandalorian and figuring out, man, you don't have to see the show, but it just sounds like you're missing a lot more if you don't. And everyone's been telling me for years it's really, really good. So I was going to review the whole series for Disney December. I'm still doing that. But something I really want to do, but I don't have time because I'm watching so many other shows and I'm adding, video games to Disney December now and stuff, is that I wanted to do like a vlog series on it. But again, I knew I couldn't do every episode. And then someone on our Twitch stream said, why don't you do it by season? That's not a bad idea. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. So I'll give you a heads up. I've seen season 1. Obviously, that's what this video is. I've already started season 2, and I think I'm about halfway. So hopefully there won't be much bleed over here. But if I do mistake, one for something that's in season 2, apologies. That's the reason why. From here on out, I'm just gonna do a vlog video like after I finish every season. But just my initial thoughts going in, because I always heard, I should make this clear, I did not see the Clone Wars movie that came before this, and everyone tells me it's bad. Now, I am gonna see it, but I wanted to see the show first, because I didn't want it to, that's one of the reasons I did not see this show, is because everyone said the movie was so bad, so I just made the assumption the show was bad. But everyone says it's great, creates some really great characters, and at the very beginning of this, it's funny, because the first couple seconds, I thought I was gonna hate it. I especially know that the first couple seasons, I guess, have like a little bit of a bad reputation. Like a lot of people say, oh, the first 2 seasons suck, and then it gets really good after that. It's kind of like Simpsons that way. I'll just say, I did not think that. I actually didn't think, the first season and what the amount of the second season I've seen have really been that bad. There are some things that don't work, but as a whole, I'm much more invested in them than, the prequels, honestly. But as soon as it started, you get these little fortune cookie sayings in the, blue text, and then you get this sort of almost like World War II, and was it World War II or World War I? It might have been World War I. The little like film reel announcements, like, today in the news on the march and stuff like that, and destruction on the planet of Naboo, we discovered blah blah blah, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna hate this. Like, this is just not gonna be for me. But once the show kept going and I realized it was actually done by very capable people and good writers and stuff, now it's something I really look forward to, because you kind of find out, oh, like, that was meant to be corny, and you kind of find out the show, much like, Star Wars in general, borrows from a lot of famous elements, and obviously, about, like, Flash Gordon and stuff like that, but, and dog fights, like, from World War I, but with the tone, it does jump around, and I mean that kind of in the best way. In the prequels, it doesn't work as well because the dialogue is very wooden, the acting's very wooden and stuff. But with this, there's a lot more care put into the characters and the stories. And with the first episode, it gives the background, and this is the one I saw, hopefully they're in order, is the one where Yoda is on this planet, he's got a bunch of the clones, and I guess they're trying to, it's the Republic and the Separatists. I mean, at least now I know the names of the good guys and the bad guys, because they've just said it so many times. I just knew the Jedi and the Sith, but I didn't know the names of, like, the big good guys or the big bad guys or whatever. So they've said so many times in this, that's nice. At least I have much more of a clear idea. But they're trying to, I guess, sort of have the planet choose a side. And, they play it much better than I do. But Yoda and the clones, it sounds like a kid show. Yoda and the clones are trying to get to them, but the Separatists are, stopping them and, delaying their path there. And so they kind of make a bargain with the rulers of the planet. They say, if we can stop Yoda and his army, we'll show that we're more powerful and you should side with us. And they said, okay, but I think, they kind of have a disadvantage, Yoda doesn't have that many clones left and stuff, and I guess they make a deal that, they think Yoda can do it, and the army and everything. So it's interesting that the first episode I saw, like I said, I think it's the first episode presented, is not even really with any of the main characters. When I think of Clone Wars and what they advertise and what I see, I think Anakin, I think Ahsoka, I think Obi-Wan, and those aren't the first people you see. So it was interesting starting off with kind of a side character with Yoda. I haven't even seen Yoda that much in the show, as far as I've gotten. And the first thing they do that I just love is they give personality to the clones. Because I always kind of thought the same thing with the androids too, or the robots. I'm just like, well, how... Are these people or aren't they? Do they program the personalities? Like, how do they work? And they even start going to that a little bit in this too, but I'll get to that in a second. But they really go into that each clone, and Yoda kind of teaches them this, that, no, each clone, even though you're a clone, you do have kind of your own unique personality. And he talks about, the different haircuts some of them have. And even though, yes, there's a lot of similarities, just the little differences really make you unique. He's talking about how the environment can affect that, your surroundings. Not everybody goes through the exact same experience. And that just immediately hooked me. I thought, God, that is 10 times smarter than anything we saw in the prequels. And that hooked me in. And even though I didn't exactly know what they were fighting for, I knew they were trying to get to the end of, to get to the rulers of this planet. And the winner kind of gets something from the planet. They get their side or whatever. But if you were to still ask me, what is the war about? I don't know. The great thing about this show is you don't really need to know. There is a lot of political talk and sort of, technical mumbo jumbo and stuff like that, but it's not necessary for you to know exactly what's going on. It's kind of like the original Star Wars that way, where there's an empire, there's a rebellion. But you just know the Empire's bad, and you see them do bad stuff, but you don't exactly know, what their political stances are or anything like that, unless you see the deleted Lucas scenes, which, thank God those were deleted. But with every episode, they make it clear what needs to be done, how they're going to try to do it, what goes wrong, and then how they, figure out a way to finish it off, and also what's lost and what's gained. And what I also like about this show, which again, it threw me off at first, but then I really learned to love it, they end very abruptly. They'll sort of get to whatever they'll whatever, fight off the bad guy, or the bad guys will fly away and stuff, and they'll look up and one might say, well, what have we learned today? This perhaps? They walk off, boom, it's done. There's so many kid shows, it would just really expand on that message. I mean, not a ton more, but definitely more. And I feel like this show, it's it gets its point across, and they're good lessons too. That's what I like. They really get across good lessons in terms of war and peace and so on and so forth. And then they just quickly wrap it up and they want to get to the next one, which this is a really good show to binge watch. I'm finding too. I've discovered there are some shows that don't work as well binge watching. Not a ton, but there are a few. And this is one that actually really, really works if you watch them in order. And again, some of them connect, some are... I don't want to say to be continues, but they'll pick up exactly where the last one left off, and they'll still have the little, last time this happened, blah, 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 and they'll catch you up. But at the same time, there's also kind of episodic episodes where you don't really need to know what's going on. Like I said, I don't entirely know what the war is about, but I didn't really know what it was about in the original Star Wars either. It was just the rebellion versus the Empire, and that's enough. They focus on what's really important. They focus on making the characters interesting and making the dilemmas interesting. The scenarios and the action sequences are very interesting. Even the androids, I always said, because they had in the latest Mandalorian, they had the Dark Troopers, these super aggressive androids that, are practically unstoppable, except when they are, And I always said, well, why, there's androids everywhere. Why don't they fight the armies? Why do we even need to make clones when you just have androids do it? And this shows very clearly that the robot technology is not where it should be. Like, even like C-3PO is probably one of the better robots. and R2-D2 is like, you notice by far is a super high functioning robot compared to a lot of these others. And the best way they show it is these battle droids. There's one great line where I think one just keeps missing. The other turns to, how can you keep missing? And he says, I can't help it. It's how I was programmed. And it's, for some reason, that line just suddenly made me realize, I'm like, okay, that really is it. It's like the technology is not up to where it needs to be for them to fight battles. So you see them constantly, torn apart and making one-liners. They're actually really funny. These are kind of the droids I wanted to laugh at in the prequels, because they had kind of funny voices, and every once in a while there's kind of a silly line, you're under arrest, like that's, especially with that robotic voice. And in this one, I feel like they just really utilized the comedy, even if the line is not that funny. Their delivery makes it very funny. So that's a lot of fun. You got General Grievous as one of the main villains in this, and that's another one in Revenge of the Sith. I kind of wanted more of him. He just seemed like a good, kind of intimidating, but more comedic foil. And what this show does, it's really interesting to me, is that they constantly play around with different types of strategy. I always love battles or dilemmas or whatever, where you have to make the alliance of convenience, where you have to team up with a bad guy to fight the other bad guy, to fight the common enemy is the enemy of my enemy, my friend, kind of thing. And there's one where Obi-Wan and Anakin have to team up with Count Dooku, which still sounds ridiculous. But the episode is great, and I like seeing them together. There's another one where Dooku kind of turns on Grievous to kind of test him, and there's a little bit of a mystery going on. I like that even though they say the clones, have personalities, they don't just say it and stop. Like, some of these really do follow through. There's one that, now I'm blanking. I haven't seen him. Is it Tex or Rex? It's one of them. And he has this very distinct personality that's different from the others. And he, sort of spray paints his armor a little differently. And some of the others, you get to know them and then they'll die. I'll be like, I was just starting to get to know that guy, which is good. I never felt anything for anyone that died in the prequels. So all of that is great. So it's weird. The pros and cons of the voice acting is that a lot of them really sound like the original actors. The ones that don't, weirdly, the villains don't sound that much like the original. Like Christopher Lee doesn't sound that much like him, and the Emperor doesn't. But the actors they get are still really good, and they give kind of like their own presence to it, where even if they don't sound exactly like them, I'm okay with it, because they really bring like their own personality to it. But the others, like Padme and Anakin and Obi-Wan, they sound just like them, to the point where I thought Anakin was played by Hayden Christensen. Now, that's a con, because the actor playing him did too good a job to start off, because he is so wooden and so annoying to listen to. And I was like, oh man, couldn't they get another actor? And it turns out they did. But over the course of the season, and then I know as well, because I'm a little bit into the second season, as well, he finds his groove, and almost to a point where I'm wondering if it was intentional. If they said, okay, start off really wooden like the original actor, because if you sound too interested, you're not going to sound like him. And then slowly, over the course of the season, or I don't know if I got used to it, or if he legit got better or found his groove. I think he found his groove, because I had to listen to that dude in, the prequel movies. He never grew on me. So I get the feeling that he really found a groove in this performance, where now he does sound like him, but he sounds like him acting pretty well. There's still, it's not quite to the point where it's like unrecognizable. It's more like he turns sort of that stoic way of acting into, being actually stoic. There's a difference between stoic and wooden. And it's very difficult. I'm not gonna lie, it's very difficult to find that balance. And this guy found it. The other one that I was telling myself, she's gonna get better. It's gonna get better because everybody loves this character and they love to rip apart Star Wars. I did not like Ahsoka's voice acting at first. It never sounded like she was really there. It sounded like she was in a recording studio. It sounded like this was like a first, voiceover job. Didn't quite know how to how to really utilize the performance and how to really make it sound like you're in the middle of a battle. Just everything was pronounced so perfectly, like she was reading a script. But master, it just never sounded right. And by the end, she started to get a little better. And now that I'm in the second season, she's gotten much better. And I am sure by the end, I'll just totally love the performance. Like, absolutely. Because everyone's just said, this is one of the great Star Wars characters. Every time I see her in something, like Mandalorian or something like that, like, it's a cool character. A great design, too. Like, even though I never, I haven't seen the show until now, I always remember the design of that character with the long, weird pigtail things and the orange skin, everything. And there's also, I never know what to think about the idea of incorporating kids into the Star Wars universe, which is not to say don't make it for kids, which I'll say, this is definitely for older children, by the way. The body count in this is crazy, so keep that in mind, and the political talks and everything. This is more for, like, the X-Men, Batman, the animated series crowd. Like, you need to be patient and listen to what's being said. But in a good way. I think it treats kids like adults much more than, a lot, again, in some ways even the prequels did. But I was thinking, like, with like little boy Anakin flying the ship, and then you have Ahsoka in this, who I did not know started off this young. I mean, she's like a girl, like a teen girl, and I didn't know that. So you see, just this tiny little scrawny thing, running around with a lightsaber and stuff like that. And I never know how to feel about it, because on the one hand, I'm like, no, that's what I like about Star Wars. It's the adult, and the kids want to pretend they're in those roles. They're in the adult roles and stuff like that. And I usually don't like it when they incorporate a kid into something, but that's not to say it can't be done well. When it is done well, it's a really great thing, because I remember watching as a kid, I remember watching X-Men, even though Jubilee wasn't like the best character, there was something so cool about, like, oh my god, like, the kid is going on the mission with Wolverine and stuff like that. You feel like the kid. It's the same thing with Robin and Batman. It's like, does that really make sense? Not really, but it's just so cool to imagine, like, you're going on missions with Batman. So I feel like this one captured much more of that wonder and awe of, like, being with, going on missions with the Jedi and whipping out lightsabers and stuff like that. And sometimes you have to save them, sometimes they have to save you, and there's the camaraderie. And I really, really grew to like it more and more. But it is one of those things where it's like, as soon as it was introduced in the prequels, it seemed odd. Just all these little these kids with lightsabers learning how to be Jedis and such. It just seemed a little weird. But I guess it was talked about in Empire Strikes Back, like with Luke, Yoda's like, he's too old. So it's like, all right, they obviously start them very young. It's I don't know. It's growing on me. This is the series that's making it grow on me, where the prequels did not. It just looks silly. Seeing, like, the little kid driving the big, the desert race and stuff like that. That just and then driving the ship and blowing people. I mean, it just looks so ridiculous. But this show, I think, at least so far, is starting to really capture that imagination and that excitement of a kid going on missions with pretty much your heroes. You're going, I'm sure if I was a kid and I grew up with the prequels, I would like Anakin and Obi-Wan and stuff like that, and Jar Jar and stuff. Oh, let's talk about him. Okay, so something I've been noticing in this show is that even though Lucas created it and he produced it and stuff like that, there's a little bit of a trollish element to it that I don't know if it's intentional or not. Because again, I won't talk too much about second season, but there are some scenes where they go back to places they've been before in the prequels, and they have an action sequence, and there's even kind of I never thought we'd be back here, that kind of thing. but they do the action sequences so much better, and they make them easy to follow, and the setups are very clear, and there's good surprises and twists, and you like the characters, and even just the actual action itself, the actual action, is just so much better. So there's that element. And then there's an element where I swear they're trying to make things worse, and that's Jar Jar. It's like you have this good writing from these characters, and whether they were required to put Jar Jar in there, you know, maybe Lucas is like, oh, he's the key, you gotta get him in there. I don't know why Lucas is Clinton when I talk. Or if it's something where it's like, they're like, hey, let's have fun with this. Let's just make him even worse. They don't do him any favors, because it isn't just him tripping over stuff and being annoying, though there's certainly that. And it's not in many episodes, but when he's in one, the camera's on him for most of the time. So on top of being annoying and the voice not being, much better, it's the fact that when he slips on something or goofs up, sometimes people die. Like, there's one where, he does something where he falls into, the cockpit of, these, stormtroopers, flying, the clones flying, and the ship crashes, and, the senator that they were trying to transport is just dead, and it's all his fault. There's another, I think it might have even been the same episode, or maybe someone similar, one that was similar, where you have, he's trying to sneak into a place. I think he's trying to rescue Padme or something, or the other clones, and, some of the clones are with him. It's he's not as stupid as he looks. Give him a chance. And it's he totally is. Anything that ever happens is by accident if it's a plus, a good thing to happen. There's another one where they're trying to interrogate someone, get some answers out of him, and he sees a bug and he tries to get it with the tongue and knocks all these shells over, and just when the guy's about to give away the answer, the shells squash the guy. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm they're actually trying to make us hate him more, and I kind of feel bad, man. It's I don't know, that character is played by an actor too. He needs work. But I don't know, maybe they always find a way around it most of the time, except, again, when characters die. Or, sometimes he'll trip and fall on something, and it works to their advantage. But the times when it doesn't is man, you guys were trying to just kill this character even more. So I didn't know what to think of that. On the one hand, that is kind of funny, but I have no idea if it was intentional or what the thought process was around it. So, I didn't know what to think of that. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on that, honestly. What you thought of Jar Jar, at least in the first season. Because I just thought they were making him worse, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there were more of him, goofing up and helping out more than, I saw. So, yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Oh, another thing, too. So, I know the animation style is based on the hand-drawn, animations that they did, a few years earlier, before this. And so they tried to, translate that into CG. And again, when I saw bits of the movie, the Clone Wars movie, I thought it looked hideous. I thought, this looks awful. This doesn't work at all. But with the show, something they do, and I thought this was so clever, is that the faces are not super expressive yet. Again, in season 2, they start to get a little bit more expressive, but they're not that expressive. And to their credit, they're doing a lot for an animated show. They also have the advantage that this is Lucasfilm animating it. Most of the prequels are done in computer, so they just already have these places set to go. So that's great. Half these alien creatures and stuff. But what I like about the animation is that if they do not have time to get the, facial reactions to something or really make them think about something, because that's what I love about a lot of great animations, looking at the facial expressions. And these aren't that hot, but they get the mood and the ideas across through the action, when they have to do action sequences. I mean, they look good. I mean, it's still clearly animated. It's not they look realistic, but they're still creatively done. And the lighting in this show is really great. Like, this is something I do not see in animated shows. Like, maybe they're more in CG shows, because I haven't seen a ton of CG shows. But that's something where I feel like, okay, like, this feels somehow more believable with how convincing the lighting is and the shadows and stuff, and the shots as well. Though you do start to pick up on some of the tricks that they do. Like, count how many times there's a shot where someone's like this, there's another person here, maybe another one here, and a couple like, they do that a couple times, and it looks good. They just rely on that shot a lot. But again, I don't see that shot a lot in animated shows, because they usually take too much time to do. There's a lot of, very, I don't want to say drone shots, but, a lot of, like, sweeping shots where you'll go through, parts of the ship or a city or something like that, and they don't rely too much on them. They're not infuriating. They have a good balance of it. And I think the last thing I'll talk about that I really enjoyed in this, especially for, like, older children to watch, I really like that they discuss the pros and cons of fighting and not fighting, of just a war in general. There's a lot of episodes where there's a race of people that won't fight, or one person that won't fight, or the Jedi are always trying to find ways to, defend themselves, but not necessarily kill unless they have to, or if they need to get information out of somebody. They can't technically hurt them, but they can find other ways. And again, you see how Anakin kind of breaks the rules, sometimes for the best, sometimes for the worst. But I don't know, in a lot of kids shows, there's a lot of talk of just fighting bad, never fight, no good comes of it. And I'm one of those people where it's like, but then when I go to history class, there's a lot of wars where it's like fighting was necessary. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm definitely not saying there's an easy answer for it, but I like that in Star Wars and in the show called Clone Wars, they actually talk about the difficult decisions in being in a war. Whether you fight or do you have to fight, the options. I like that they talk about options. Even if the option is you have to fight. Even though there's another one where, these people do not want to get... There's actually a couple episodes where it's... a group of people do not want to get involved in the war, and you can't blame them. It's like, if you have no part in it, that's fine. But there's, like, people that have crashed on, the place, and they're dying, or someone's gonna, like, come in and take over the place or something like that, and their hand is kind of forced, and so they go along with it, and maybe they'll win that day, but there's definitely that dread of, what have we just started, man? What have we just gotten into? Like, even doing the right thing, they question, was this the right thing? And what I love about this show is that you know what's going to happen, and you know where it's going to lead, you know all the bad stuff that's going to happen, and it's one of the first times I feel bad for the clones. Like, now looking back at the prequels, I'm like, oh my god, I really feel sorry for these clones that, and I haven't even gotten to, like, those seasons yet, or those episodes yet, where I'm sure that's going to be addressed, where they turn on Order whatever 66. So it's something where I like that dread is always there. Because I always kind of said I didn't like the idea that, in the prequels, everything's clean, everything's nice, because that's not the Star Wars we grew up with. But something the show is doing, or has done, I should say, I mean, it's done, is it's making me realize what Lucas was trying to do. Because so many people looked at the prequels and said, what was he thinking? What was the idea? And it feels like this was the idea. It showed how this world did work, and it was just barely, it was like hanging out by a thread, but it was working. And it was, a lot of it seemed disciplined, and a lot of it also seemed peaceful, and it seemed balanced out, but there was only so long that could go before, but they still had to fight people from trying to take down that order and that balance. And even in that order and balance, there's questions. Should things work this way? Is this correct? And they try to figure it out. And it's all gonna go to shit when the Empire takes over. And I feel like that's what the prequels were trying to do, but they just couldn't do it because they had too much talking about all the political stuff. They made that too much of the focus, not enough on character, and when there was character, it was so poorly written and so poorly acted and directed and all that stuff that you couldn't even quite figure out what was trying to be accomplished here. Where this one, not only do I see what's trying to be accomplished, they accomplish it. They get it done. So I've been told that this is like this season, the second season, are like, oh, they're the crappy ones, they're the bad ones. So far, I like them. I don't love them yet. I'll admit if I saw this, when they came out, I'd probably say, oh, that's good. But I wouldn't go out of my way to keep watching it. I'd probably have to wait for word of mouth, like what's happening here, to tell me, no, stay with it. It gets better and better and better. But yeah, if this is the starting point for this show, it's really not that bad a starting point. And it does get me interested and invested. And with the second season, I'm just becoming even more invested, but I'll get to that when we get to when I get to the end of the second season there. So what did you guys think of the first season of Clone Wars? I know it's been out for a while now and I'm just catching up, but what were you seeing some of your favorite episodes? Do you think it holds up, or are you like, nah, it's bad? If you watched it again, what was better than you remember and what was worse than you remember? I'm sure there's both, but yeah, so far, I'm digging it. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I really like the idea of something that took what somebody else started. It didn't quite work with the prequels. Obviously, Star Wars in general worked, but the prequels did not. And they saw what was supposed to be good about it. They saw the value in it, and they brought that to the forefront. And I really, really like that, because I am not a huge fan of the prequels at all. Revenge of the Sith is okay, but I just did not really get into them, so I really like that here's finally something that said, no, you just gotta look at it from a different point of view. So there you go. I worked that lame-ass line in there. So, guys, that's about it. Let me know what you think of Season 1, and I'll see you next time. Take care.